But John was of a different opinion even at that point. He said it didn't matter to him either way. Whatever was happening, that was his baby, and he would love that baby. Whereas I was just more naive, really, about the bigger world. I think I'd just been closeted a little bit from it and didn't really understand what went on, really. So we went for the NIPT testing, and it came back inconclusive. And that took 10 days for that. Right. And at that appointment, we had a 4D scan, and we saw much more of our baby's face. We didn't know if our baby was male or female. We didn't know anything more than just looking at that baby's face in 4D and falling in love with that baby at that point, whilst having my blood drawn. A multitasking appointment, and having my blood drawn, having the, looking at the baby, doing a 4D scan. So again, they were looking for soft markers and couldn't see any other than the nuchal fold. But even that, they said, I think they came back with an even smaller measurement than the original midwife at the 12-week scan had come back with. So it was a bit like, are you sure? Are you just, because at this point, a lot of people were saying to me, well, the blood tests come back high risk, not high chance, should be high chance. It came back saying high risk because of my age, potentially, because they look at they do a blood test, but they look at they do some kind of weird calculation with your age and your weight and all this stuff. So all that stuff was going against me, was how I felt. And maybe this baby doesn't have Down syndrome. I don't know. I knew the baby wouldn't have Edwards or Patta at that point, but I didn't know. Right. It was still a bit up in the air, but I felt like maybe not from the scans that they were doing and what they were saying to me. And then it came back inconclusive, and they said, well, you can come in and have the blood test done again. We won't do another scan, but we'll do another blood test. Did that. Another 10 days passed. So we're now like 20 days past my initial 12-week scan. So we're nearly a month, really, past. So we're into April. Inconclusive again. Absolute devastation. What do we do now? Because I really wanted to know at this point. John was a bit like, oh, maybe we should just leave it, Laura. This isn't working. Let's just, not keep trying to find this out. And I said, let me ring the screening midwife and see what she says. So I rang the screening midwife at the screening midwife at the RVI, who was lovely, actually. And she said, she really calmed me down. I was in a bit of a state. And she calmed me down and she said, look, Laura, if you really want to know, you need to come in for an amniocentesis. We can do one this afternoon, or you'll have to wait till after the Easter break. Hey. This was the Tuesday before the Good Friday. So I went in, and Did
you go alone?
Well, it was John's last day in his previous role at work. He didn't feel he could not turn up for that. And we were already partway through the day. He was already at work, and he needed to go and drop his equipment off for the for them because he was leaving. So he just wanted to do that and get rid. And I was like, well, and I spoke to one of my friends and she said, Laura, just pull your big girl pants up and get on with it. And I did. And I was lucky that we had a fantastic consultant who greeted
Where were you?
me.
Which hospital were you?
So in the RVI, in the FMU unit.
So that's the Royal Victoria Infirmary here in Newcastle upon Tyne.
Yes. And I was under the care of the fetal medicine unit. So it's a specific unit to look at, babies and their growth and all the rest of it and what's happening with them. So it's like opposite where all the mums sit waiting to have their scans, which I don't believe is the best thing, because if you're going in with potential issues with that baby, you're seeing lots of very pregnant women waiting for scans and things, and it's not ideal for your hormones and regulating your emotions. I actually think it should be in a slightly different part of the hospital. I understand why it is where it is. It all makes sense. They're all together and the midwives probably cross over and stuff. But from my point of view as a patient, I found it really difficult seeing all the very heavily pregnant mums when I was very early on in my pregnancy, with a lot of potential problems. So Gareth Waring greeted me, and he was a consultant in the fetal medicine unit, and he was very reassuring, very calming, just had a brilliant nature and was just so good with me, especially because I'd come in on my own. And I think the screening midwife had probably explained to him what a state I was in, and I didn't really want to be coming in on my own, but I have to. So he kind of metaphorically held my hand through the process. And the first thing he did was do his own sort of scan and get a feel for what he was dealing with. And the first news he gave me was, well, placenta is front attached, Laura. Are you aware of that? I said, no, what does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean, Laura? What does it mean a placenta is front attached?
It normally attaches to the back of your womb.
Right.
It can sometimes attach to the bottom, which isn't great either. I think that's really complicated if it does that. But mine was attached to the front. And that meant he couldn't safely do the amniocentesis. So he had to explain the different test he was going to do, which uses a bigger needle